Welcome folks, I'm Jaby Koay, joined by ACHARA KIRK.
Hello!
We're going to talk about Christopher Robin, the film directed by Mark Forster, who has brought you other child-friendly films such as Monsters Ball, The Kite Runner, Quantum of Solace, Machine Gun Preacher, and World War Z.
Wow, that's
Christopher Robin is probably the most inoffensive movie I've ever watched in my life. Save for the very opening, it alludes to war, but outside of that, like, there's nothing violent in this movie.
Yes, it is the most family-friendly.
I'm pretty sure it's the most family-friendly film I've ever watched ever, outside of Ponyo. If you look at his photo, he looks like an intense guy. That's the funniest thing.
He really does,
He'll do a film like this, it's just like, I would have to imagine he's a nice dude. He's got to work with kids and stuff. Let's start off with, like, for parents, if you guys are just looking to find out whether or not this is for your kids, as I just said, it's pretty inoffensive. Yeah. It's the most family-friendly film ever.
We went to a screening full of children.
Yeah.
What was really lovely was hearing their little laughs as well throughout. Like, they really enjoyed it. So if you do have some young children you want to bring to this, this is definitely A-okay.
If you're a grown-up just wondering if it like kind of touches that nostalgia that you probably remember, I'd say it does.
Yes.
But the pace of the film moves along the same way as Harry Potter, in my opinion. If you're not into Harry Potter, or if you're not like ready for it, that pace can kind of wear on you. And it's like there's laughs throughout the movie. I was laughing throughout the movie. I was getting chuckles out of it, but there were some moments I'm like, okay, let's move this along. Let's move this along. And it's not the movie's fault. It's like, it's very English in its nature. It moves along at Pooh Bear's pace. Let's just put it that way.
Oh yeah, that's actually a very good way to put it. If you grew up loving Winnie the Pooh like I did, from the opening scene, it was tear central for me.
You weren't that bad.
I
looked over at you a couple times. You weren't that bad.
I was just holding my tears back very quietly and just quietly having a bit of a rain slide on my face.
If you want to know about the more nuanced aspects of the film, the style of how it was shot, looking at the guy, it makes more sense to me now.
Because you were mentioning something about that.
It feels like Where the Wild Things Are. Where the Wild Things Are was shot very handheld, so it gave you this sense that you were really there. But there was a part of me that's like, this is kind of like Born Identity lo-fi, just in terms of the camera shaky stuff. It didn't zoom in and out. There wasn't explosions left and right or anything like that. But just in terms of how the framing was, it felt like someone shooting a documentary on the fly or something like that. I don't know, it's not like a found footage movie, but it wasn't like structured like perfect framing all the time on a tripod. It was all handheld shots except for the wide shot with the tree.
Talking about that tree, I think that the production design of this movie was just stunning. Like, you can tell that they really drew from the source material, from E.H. Shepard's line illustrations that you would find in the book. It just really brought it to life. It really hit me in the feels. I think that's why, like, when you first told me about that whole handheld, I didn't even notice because I was so busy, like, it's Pooh and Piglet and Eeyore and they're all just wonderful, and I thought the story was delightful. Like, if there's any one word that I would use to describe this movie, it would be delightful.
It really was. Yeah. I mean, it was a film that was very pleasant, and it kind of brings you back to your childhood. It's very innocent.
Yes.
I genuinely feel like Ewan McGregor is really the only actor that could have done this movie. This reminds me a little bit of like a much better version of that film he did for Tim Burton.
Big Fish.
Big Fish.
Yeah.
This is a way better version of that. In terms of just like the lightheartedness, the tone, the innocence, and all that. Like, but Big Fish was a pretty innocent film. Ewan McGregor he just slips right into those roles pretty well for some odd reason. The cast was great in this. Haley Atwell, Bronte Carmichael, Mark Gatiss. Everybody they chose for this film was pretty spot on with it, like, in their performances. I don't know if it was the director or the acting, like, or just a combination of the two, but like there were moments where I just wanted more out of Ewan McGregor, but I feel that often with him. The only film I've watched him in where I had no complaints was Trainspotting. But outside of that, I haven't seen the second Trainspotting, but every other film I've watched him in, I'm like, oh, okay, you could have, like, outside of him saying, you were supposed to be the chosen one, I've always got some kind of complaint about him. And here, I would give him like a 90%.
I thought he did a fantastic job. And another person that really stood out to me was Haley Atwell, because she just hit all the right notes as the wife.
They don't show you in the film how Ewan McGregor picks up on Haley Atwell. The movie goes into the stage of their marriage, their relationship, where it's at now versus where it used to be. And it's like, well, how did it get to where it used to be? I can understand how it got to where it's at now, but I really want to see exactly what he did to get it in the beginning so that you have something to hook onto as like, oh, like, remember that bond that they had in that first moment they started talking? Like, there was kind of a goofy moment, but I wanted words. I don't know. They didn't do it with words. They just did it with visual, which is contrary to what I usually ask for, but go ahead.
While that's lovely, I think the main point of the story is that whole idea of saying goodbye to your childhood and then rediscovering your childlike wonder and joy and happiness in your life. So while the romance aspect is lovely, it wasn't really in the forefront.
Overall, I really like this film. Again, the visual effects, we haven't talked about it too much.
Yes, oh my god.
But like, it's the first thing you see, and it's amazing. It's so seamless that it feels real. I don't know how they did it. I haven't watched the behind the scenes at all, but it was profoundly
lovely.
It was spectacular.
Yeah, they did a really good job of kind of animating them so they did look like these soft toys that had been lovingly played with, but also still had a soul, if that makes sense.
I would put it on par with the tiger from Life of Pi. If you guys remember the tiger in Life of Pi, that was completely digital and it looked very, very photoreal. I would imagine part of that has to do with anyone working on these films probably loved the story as a kid. Everyone working on this, I would imagine it was like a passion project for them.
Yeah, like you can just feel the love emanating from it, and I was so happy.
The last thing we should probably talk about before we move into spoilers is the voices. I thought that everybody did a wonderful job, especially Winnie the Pooh. The voice acting was great.
Yeah.
I thought the voice, like all around, this was a solid movie. For me, even though I have some gripes with it, I still give it a 5 out of 5. I think that it's just such a well-made film all around.
All the stars. I give it all the stars, full stars, full marks. I loved it, and just all the little Winnie the Pooh characters were just spot on. It was so nice to see my favorites.